Hey everyone, Austin here again with another Let's Play video. Today, as you can see, it's going to be New Adventure Island for the PC Engine, or Turbo Grafx-16, depending on which region you're in. This is a really solid Adventure Island game. I actually had never finished this up until just this year. Just actually within the last few weeks was the first time I finished this game. And it's one I've always wanted to really, sink my teeth into, but the Adventure Island series is a tough series, and it wasn't until these last couple of years I was able to even beat Part 1, or Part 2, or even the original Wonder Boy on the Master System. And so this was one of those games, while, I wanted to play it, I was like, I can't beat the other games, why am I going to even bother, So while I played this game previously, I've only played a couple levels in, and then I'd lose interest as the game would get more challenging, and then I would just, shelve it for a while. But with having beaten the original Adventure Island for the very first time, just before the new year, and then doing Adventure Island 2 in the previous year, and then even doing the Game Boy ones for the first time, and then doing a Let's Play of Adventure Island 3, and doing a Let's Play of Wonder Boy, that gave me the motivation to finally try to tackle the PC Engine Adventure Island game. And I'm glad to say that I've been able to do it, and I'm happy that I was able to do it, because it's a fun game. It's very colorful, there's lots of big sprites, and it's a great take on the original Adventure Island formula. So it definitely follows more in the footsteps of the original game on the Famicom or the Nintendo Entertainment System. Or even you can look at it as, follows in the footsteps of the original Wonder Boy arcade game. And it's a little more simplistic in that regard. Doesn't have the dinosaurs and things like that from, parts 2 and 3 in the NES. And, but it does have the benefit of having, obviously, lots of colors, big sprites and things like that. And it's got some nice graphical effects as well that you don't always see in the PC Engine. There's a couple stages throughout the game I'll point out that have some really nice parallax scrolling effects and things like that, which some developers weren't able to do well on the PC Engine, but some developers like Hudson were really able to crank out some impressive visuals in the system, and this is definitely a good-looking game. So, but yeah, we're going to try to go through the whole game. It is challenging, like the other games. There's the possibility I'll die a lot, and I will say I'm not as familiar with this as I am, like Super Adventure Island, or even the original Adventure Island on the NES now. But we'll give it our best, and we'll see what happens. I've had a variety of runs in this game in my practice sessions. I've had ones where I've only died once throughout the whole playthrough, then I've had other runs where I just continue 3 or 4 times, which is embarrassing, but we'll see what sort of balance we can strike in this playthrough here as we go through the game and I explain things. But before we get into the actual gameplay itself, as usual, I'd like to give a big shout out to my current Patreon backers. Thank you guys for your continued support. We did actually get a new patron in this last week or two, Jeffrey Schaefer. So thank you, Jeffrey, for your pledge. I really, really appreciate it. We're also going to flash by those live stream super chatters. So I do live streams every Friday night here on YouTube. If you want to join up on a live stream and just chit-chat with me while we play some games, feel free to check those out on Friday night, and thank you guys for your direct donations on the live streams. So alright, with that, let's go ahead and just hit the start button, or that's right, we're on a PC Engine, it's the run button, not a start button. So yeah, just like in the original Adventure Island, you basically have a run button and you have a jump button, and your run button is also your attack button. And we just picked up the axe. It's an axe in this game, not a hammer. In the original game, it was a hammer. You also get skateboards, and we're going to actually go ahead and keep this skateboard for a good part of this first level here. Just like the original Adventure Island on the NES, I want to get the fire. And the fire operates much like it does in the original Adventure Island. It can destroy rocks. But what's really cool is this boomerang here can also destroy rocks. And so we also got this fairy, which makes you invincible for a short period of time. And we're going to try to lose our skateboard around, I'd say here probably. Because I think there's a hidden egg which will give us fire as long as we've already got a weapon. And it's somewhere around here. It's right here. You notice how my boomerang is just getting deflected off thin air apparently. Well, if you jump in areas like these, you'll reveal some hidden eggs. They can range from providing you fire, which is a much more powerful attack, to providing things like 1-ups and rings, which will give you a bunch of extra points and things like that. And so yeah, the fire, much like the original Adventure Island on the NES, is extremely, extremely important in this game if you want to have a really solid run. It's a fast weapon, it shoots at an arc, and it's just very, very handy. these frogs. You got the green frogs, just like in the original games, and if you hit the green frogs once with the normal weapon, they'll turn to a pink frog, and once they're pink, they'll start hopping at you. But with the fire, you just kill them in one hit, no matter what. So we're gonna try to stick with the fire as long as we can in this game. And the fire also destroys boulders, pretty much any form of rock. Bam, just like that. And so having the fire in this game and keeping it is very, very good for survival. So we're going to go ahead and try to keep that. These are checkpoints right here. The Hudson bees, the bee flags, those are checkpoints. And in the original Adventure Island on NES, I like to not use the skateboard. I find myself being much more safe without the skateboard. In this game, I actually feel the opposite. Like, you have much better control. Like, look how fast you can stop in this game with the skateboard. So the skateboard's a lot more useful in this game. And there was actually a remake, not really a remake, but sort of another Adventure Island game on the PlayStation 2 and GameCube in Japan as a part of the Hudson Selection series. And it was actually mostly based on this game. It took a ton of elements from this game specifically, including the skateboard physics. And the skateboard physics are actually even more useful in that game. You guys will see that in an upcoming playthrough as well. I need to do some practice on it, but hopefully in the next, couple of months you guys can see, or will see, a Let's Play of the PlayStation 2 version. But in this and that version, I like to use the skateboard. It's very handy. You can progress through the levels faster, and you can stop on a dime, so it's not as risky to use. And if you do take a hit, it absorbs that hit. So that's one of the great things about the skateboard. Adventure Island has always been pretty much a one-hit death kind of game. So you get hit, you die, and you go back to a checkpoint. But with the skateboard, you do get to absorb a hit, which is pretty awesome. Now, the problem with the skateboard in the original Adventure Island on NES is that it really puts you out of control, and that game has much more devious platforming. It has many, many more enemies. The difficulty ceiling is much higher on the original Adventure Island, whereas the difficulty ceiling on this game is much lower. So the skateboard, as a result, ends up being much more useful. So this is the fourth stage. Every fourth stage is basically the boss level, and there are no checkpoints on these boss levels. So you have to be really careful on these stages. Although these stages are a little bit shorter than your main levels, because they don't have checkpoints, and that is kind of nice. And this is where we're gonna fight bosses. We actually fight legitimate bosses in this game. Every boss in this game has a different pattern than one another. You gotta watch out for these sort of ground-poundy things, and whenever they hit the ground, they shoot fire out on both sides, and the fire will kill you. And right before the boss fight, you always get a choice of weapon, although there's no axe there, surprisingly. And I'm sure we'll probably die later on. I'll get to show off the arrow, which is a pretty useful weapon as well. So this first boss here, he's going to drop a projectile on the ground that basically shoots lightning across the ground. So you need to jump over it like that. Now, one of the downsides to the fire is if a boss like that turns in the opposite direction, you're not going to be able to hit the boss with the fire. But with the arrow will actually go over their head and then fall on their head if you basically get your distance correct. And so in some cases, the arrow is more useful, but the fire is more powerful, so it's something to keep in mind as well. And after every boss, you get a little intermission. So go ahead and let the intermissions play out. But as you can see, it's a very colorful game. Lots of big sprites, bright, nice colors, which is very typical of a lot of, Turbo Grafx games. But it's definitely a nice-looking game for sure. It also takes some nods from previous Adventure Island games, which I really enjoy. As a fan of the series, people that aren't too familiar with the series might not, notice these things, but like this level in particular is very much a nod to level stylings in the, not in the original Adventure Island, but Adventure Island 2 on the NES. Like this rock design with the thicker tops. Very, very reminiscent of Adventure Island 2 on the NES, which was, kind of a nice little nod to me. There's not many levels in the game that have a nod to that game in particular. But this level is absolutely a nod to that game, which is nice. And we got the volcano spewing out projectiles from the back. And that was a hidden egg. Unfortunately, I missed it, but I'm on the skateboard. And when I'm on the skateboard, I can't stop unless I intentionally take a hit. And these flowers right there, they indicate one of the coyotes coming from behind. If you manage to kill the coyote from behind as opposed to the front, they'll drop a PC Engine controller. A PC Engine controller or Turbo Grafx controller will appear, much like the Famicom controllers in the original Adventure Island, and those will give you some good bonus points. And this is one of those levels I was talking about where there's some nice parallax scrolling, so we actually get to see some decent scrolling, some decent background animation and things like that. And there's another level in particular later on. I think it's like a rock cavern that we end up going to. It's got some really nice parallax scrolling, actually, and I'll point that out once we get to it. So score does matter in this game up to a point. You do get extra lives from points. However, there is a point... no pun intended. I didn't even mean to do that. There is a point later on where you meet a certain score threshold and you'll get no more extra lives. So... it's not like some of the other Adventure Islands where it's like every 20,000 or 50,000 points or something like that, you get an extra life guaranteed. Doesn't work like that in this game. Now, there are different score thresholds to get said extra lives, but, you can only earn so many extra lives in this game. So it's good to try to earn as many as you can, and then just play as best as you can after that. So we've got these little armadillo-type enemies as well. They roll around, and what's kind of funny about them is that when they're in their ball form, they actually are treated as rocks. So you'll actually stumble over them just like you would stumble over a rock. Now, for those of you guys, wondering what, the threat is of that, you actually have a time meter in the top left-hand portion of the screen, and every time you touch a rock, that timer ticks down faster. It takes like 2 or 3 or maybe 4 blocks of your timer off. So it's not really a health bar. It's basically a timer. And picking up fruits will extend it, or it'll replenish it, I should say. So, not only are fruits points, which are really good if you're, trying to get, say, a 1 credit clear or something like that. So you can, earn those extra lives from those points. But it also operates as your time. So you can't just sit in place for a long period of time in this game, because your time will eventually run out. Fortunately, you're never really under a major threat from running out of time in this game. I mean, you get so many fruits in this. Your timer seems to run relatively slow compared to other Adventure Island games. And I got the boomerang. Didn't want to get the boomerang, but at least we didn't get hit or lose the skateboard. This is actually a really place to get hit on the skateboard, because you'll probably end up falling into the water. And our hero here, Master Higgins, can't swim for some reason. So it's just something you got to deal with when you play this game. And this is the eggplant. So the eggplant is bad. He actually depletes your health at a pretty fast rate. Although I will say he's not nearly as threatening as he is in other Adventure Island games. Like, look at my my timer. We still have half of it, and we're at the end of the level. So the eggplants, if you get them in this game, you don't really have to worry that much. You might end up only losing a couple of blocks of your timer. Whereas if you got an eggplant in, say, the first Adventure Island, you better book it, because those guys are a serious threat in that game. So I kind of like how they sort of dumbed down the eggplants in this game, because I understand why the mechanic exists, and, I'm kind of glad it exists in the original games, but it's nice to play an Adventure Island where you don't have to worry about it. Super Adventure Island is another one, actually, where the eggplant doesn't even exist in the game, so, it makes for a little more relaxing of an experience, when you're playing this or Super Adventure Island. Because the eggplant is definitely a major source of stress in the older Adventure Island games. Now, I don't think I would enjoy the original Adventure Island as much without the eggplant, because I've learned the game so much, it's just kind of a part of that experience. But in this, it's nice having a game where I really just don't have to worry about it. Alright, so we got the arrow, and the arrow doesn't actually go all the way across the screen. after a certain point, it'll start to fall. And this boss basically drops, ooh, good, these projectiles onto the ground, and that'll trigger rocks falling from the sky. And the patterns of these rocks seems to be completely random. You'll get different patterns depending on just how the randomization feels, I guess. So yeah, I'll be able to demonstrate the arrow now that we're past the boss. And here's another intermission. There's some pretty goofy intermissions in this game. You'll see what I mean as we get farther along into the game. It's pretty funny, actually. As long as you're the kind of person that is apt to not take things too seriously in your video games, it's pretty funny. So, but here's the arrow, as you can see. As it goes partway across the screen, it falls. So it's actually pretty useful. And that's the axe. We're gonna go ahead and just stick with the arrow until I find another hidden egg where I can get some fire, because fire is the best. And this might be fire. It is fire. Nice, got it. Now you do have to watch out for the hidden eggs because they take priority over enemies. So if you're attacking with a regular weapon and your attack just bounces off a hidden egg, it's like, well, tough luck. And if there's an enemy or two coming your way, you know, you're gonna have to do something to kill those enemies, or make the egg appear first before the enemies get close to you. And there's another boomerang. I don't want that. The boomerang is a nice weapon because you can shoot out two at once, just like any other projectile, but it also destroys rocks. There's another eggplant. It's the only one of your regular enemies, not regular enemies, it's the only regular weapon that will destroy rocks. Whereas the fire is sort of a special weapon. It's a hidden weapon you have to find in a hidden egg. They don't just give it to you in normal eggs. The boomerang is your only normal weapon that can destroy rocks and boulders and whatnot. But the downside to the boomerang is that it's a very slow-firing weapon. And I just realized we're almost halfway through the game already. So again, this game only has 7 worlds, as opposed to the usual 8. And your last world is just, it's just 1 level. And it's a pretty short level, actually, too. It's not a long level at all. As long as, you know, you are familiar with the trap placement and whatnot, and you know how to get past the traps in that level. And you guys will see what I mean once we get there. And we're quickly on our way to getting there. It's a pretty decent run so far. I'm pretty happy with this. I do a lot of practice sessions on Twitch, and my performance is very inconsistent over there. And I think a lot of the reason for it is I'm mostly interacting with chat. I'm not really focusing on the games as much when I'm streaming over there and quote-unquote practicing on Twitch. And it's once I start actually doing the Let's Plays, I start playing a lot better, because I'm strictly focusing on the game, I'm strictly focusing on commentary about said game. And we're gonna go ahead and just take our time right here. So while this game can be quite challenging to learn, it's not nearly as bad as other Adventure Island games. And actually, I wanted to point out the parallax scrolling on that level. It's some nice parallax scrolling there, too. But yeah, there are a handful of parts, though, where you still have to kind of memorize what to do, because there are several traps where if you just push forward at full speed, you're going to get killed pretty much guaranteed. And so we got a skateboard here again. I'm going to go ahead and try to keep it. Now, there's a part later on in this level that I have a tendency of grabbing a boomerang by accident, and I really don't want to do that. So let's try to not do that, and I'll sort of point it out once we get to it. It's right up here, I believe. Yep, so we're going to jump over it like that, because there's a boomerang just previously, and there's a... Oh, that's the boomerang! Oh, I did it again. I always do it. Alright. I believe there's also going to be some coyotes here, and I think this might be the level where they introduce the jumping coyotes, and they're really a pain to deal with. Yeah, these different colored flowers indicate the jumping coyotes, like that. For the jumping coyotes, they're so inconsistent, I like to just turn around and shoot them. The problem is, the boomerang is not the best weapon to do that with. But this is probably fire. Awesome, we got our fire back. We're just going to turn around. Ooh, see, look at that. He was almost off the screen, and then he jumped. It just... I still haven't quite figured out the rhythm or rhyme to the jumping coyotes. That's okay, at least we got through that level without dying, because I do have a tendency of dying on this stage. The jumping coyotes really give me trouble. So far, no deaths. So we're on the boss stage for Area 3 already. So pretty happy about that. Decent run so far. Can't really complain. And we are not going to grab the boomerang. So these guys that smash down to the ground, and the little, you know, spike carts with moles in them, yeah, these guys, they both make reappearances in the PlayStation 2 Hudson Selection version of Adventure Island. Really fun game. I highly recommend checking that out if you have a Japanese PlayStation 2 or a GameCube that's modified. You can play Japanese imports on a GameCube if you've got your system modified. Now, there might even be more streamlined ways of playing imports, actually, on GameCube. It's been a while since I've looked into it. So this guy basically drops these ice blocks. I'm gonna try to just destroy them, like so. I actually died on this boss a bunch of times when I was doing my last practice session. But another good fight, we didn't die. And what's cool is the second you kill the boss, you basically become invincible. So any projectile that the boss has out, and if it, you know, if it hits you, you won't die. So there's no threat. It's not one of those games where you kill the boss and you're still vulnerable. So that's always nice. And here we go. This is what I was talking about. Some of the intermissions are kind of hilarious in kind of a weird, goofy way. But it's all in good fun. And, you know, when I was streaming this game, a lot of people commented on this background and said it looks a lot like Super Mario World. And it actually really does. But this level does have a couple of new things going on here. For one, there's this big monkey you'll have to attack. And so you kind of want to stay far away from him when you do that. You've also got these red snakes. Unlike the original Adventure Island on the NES, there's really no rhythm or rhyme to them. And, you know, so in the original Adventure Island, you could, if you shot a rock with a hard weapon, not fire, the snakes would shoot at you. If you didn't shoot a rock, or if you shot a rock with fire and you killed the rock, the snakes wouldn't fire. That mechanic seems to have been ditched in this version. And the snakes just kind of fire like whenever they want. There's really no rhythm or rhyme to it as far as I've been able to tell. And there's the skateboard. One other benefit to having the skateboard is if you're really all about those points, there's another ape, or monkey. If you're really all about those points, the skateboard will give you extra points if you beat the level with it. Much like the Adventure Islands on the NES, you know, when you beat a level with a skateboard, it disappears, you get points for it, and you won't start the next level with the skateboard. So the skateboard's gone, but at least you get some points for it. So if you're trying to get those extra lives, then that's, you know, a good way to do it. And this is another level with some, you know, nice scrolling in the background. Always love the waterfall effects. There's another skateboard. Now, some like the spring physics in this game are a little odd, though. I will say that. It took me a little while to get used to them. When you get popped up in this game off a spring, you just pop up like almost immediately. And I don't know if doing this part with the skateboard is such a good idea, but we passed it, and there's another hidden. Oh, we still got the hidden egg with the skateboard. That is rare. That is definitely rare. Actually, I don't even think I've ever done it before. But it goes to show that with the skateboard, if you time your jump just right, you can make the egg appear and still trigger it. So that's makes the skateboard even better than I had originally given it credit for. Yeah, so 5,000 points for a skateboard completion. Whew, still doing pretty good. I mean, I don't want to like be sitting here congratulating myself, but you should have seen my practice runs on Twitch last night. I did 2 runs, and I got multiple game overs on both runs, so I'm pretty happy about this so far. But, you know, just like every other Adventure Island, the game gets harder and harder as you progress. But as long as you've got the fire, you know, the cards are in your favor. And I don't want that. When you see the red snakes, you really want to just take your time. Just take your time. Remember that you're not as pressured for time in this game as you are in other Adventure Island games. So you can sort of tiptoe your way, much like Super Adventure Island. It's actually really a lot like that game in terms of the fruit accumulation and the amount of time you get and things like that. You're really not nearly as pressured as you are in the earlier Adventure Island games. And there's a checkpoint. We don't actually need to go up there. We can just hit it from the bottom. And so the little armadillo guys, very much like rocks, they can be killed when they're in their shielded form. And this is going to be a ring. So rings are pretty good points. And another hidden egg right here. And it's a 1-up. A 1-up that we don't actually need. So I think you only get a maximum of 9 lives in this game. I don't believe the counter goes past 9. So some games will actually cap out. They'll appear to cap out at a certain number, but they're actually registering higher than the number that's actually displaying on the screen. So a good example is like Battletoads. You know, Battletoads, you only got to 5 lives, but it counts every life past that. So you can get up to 20-something lives if you want to in that game. But in the Adventure Island series, it's always been, if you get 9 lives, that's as high as it actually will give you. Even if you get a 1-up after it's, you know, capped at 9, you won't get awarded another 1-up. It'll just stay at 9 lives. So playing the Hudson selection version of Adventure Island really prepped me well for this game, actually, because I was unaware that it took a lot of elements from this game specifically, like the traps and things like that. These spike rectangular objects, they're in the Hudson selection version as well. And so when I came and played this game, I was like, wow, this is very familiar. I had no idea that a lot of the elements in the PS2 game and GameCube game were, you know, originally taken from this game. It's just pretty cool to witness and see. So this basically drops boulders, and you just gotta jump over them. There we go, 5,000 points for beating the boss. And here's another intermission. Alright, stage 5-1, here we go. So this level can be a little bit tricky. These rainy levels have a tendency of having lightning clouds. So we're gonna have to watch out for them later on. But they're super easy to avoid. Once you know the enemy patterns in this game, you know, a lot of things in this game are just very easy to avoid or get around once you know what to do. And really, this game is nowhere near as hard to learn as, you know, the more traditional... I don't want to say more traditional. This is totally a traditional Adventure Island game. But the earlier Adventure Island games, they are much more difficult games to learn. There's a couple of really tight jumps in this level here. Like this spring right here. You've got to hit it just right. Ooh, look at that. We almost missed it. And these are the lightning clouds I was talking about. They're actually super easy to avoid. they just shoot lightning in 2 directions, then they move on. They're like, okay, we're done. But if you're rushing through really, really fast, you're gonna get hit by them. Pretty much guaranteed. So it's just one of those things where you just want to take your time. Just take your time. There's some milk. Milk pretty much refills all of your time. And we're gonna go ahead and just sit on this platform and just wait for this cloud. Sit on this platform, wait for this cloud. Ooh. Actually picked a bad time to jump because this platform was all the way over. But as you can see, it's just about waiting. It's about taking your time and not rushing. And that big snail was actually something interesting. I wanted to talk about it, but apparently the fire is too powerful for it, and I killed it in 1 hit. Or maybe it was 2 hits. I don't remember. So normally with a regular weapon, if you hit those snails, those big snails, they'll pop out tiny snails, like the little snails you see in the earlier parts of the game. And so they're a little tricky to deal with, especially as you get on in this level, or this set of stages. I believe it's the set of stages where you see them again, and they're combined with other enemies as well, which makes them tricky to deal with. Now this level also has another set of big enemies. It's got these bears that take a bunch of hits, and they'll basically drop logs from the treetops. And you've also got some snowmen here, which are actually pigs in disguise. And we got another... Oh, we got our first death of stupid coyotes. I was trying to turn around to attack, but turning around and attacking in this game is not nearly as responsive as it is in the earlier Adventure Island games. So it's something you've got to watch out for when you're playing this game. I feel like you're not quite as nimble when it comes to like turning back and attacking. Your attacks don't seem to come out quite as quickly as they do in the original games. So that still catches me off guard. And so we're just going to jump over this coyote, just like so. And here's the bear. Just like so. For big enemies like that, you just want to stay far away. Remember that your weapons are fairly long range in this game. They don't go all the way across the screen, but it's close to it. So you've got some distance to work with. And we're just going to jump over this coyote. Oh, and we're not going to get that boomerang, because we're just going to jump over this coyote. Oh, look at that. We made the PC Engine controller up here, and we died. I made too small of a jump. I landed on that rock, and that pushed me into the rabbit. So now I'm going to have to get the boomerang. Whoa, or get killed by that rat. Oh, look at that. I just disproved myself as well. It does actually calculate more than 9 lives. Look at that. We're still at 9 lives. I didn't know that. We're apparently just going to let this guy jump over us. I didn't know that rat would just jump like that, too. Like, do a big jump. Well, this actually works out because the boomerang, again, destroys rocks. We don't have to worry about that rock now. But we got some coyotes. And because I don't have the fire, I'm just not going to deal with the coyotes at all. I'm just going to jump over them. That's actually really awesome. So I thought the game didn't calculate past 9 lives, but it actually does. That's really cool. I love it when I learn things like that in these Let's Plays. I feel bad for giving you guys the wrong information in the beginning, but at least we're able to, you know, steer the course, or steer things back on the right track, you know, in the same playthrough. That's what's fun about, you know, sort of like analyzing these old games. And I know I don't really go deep into like my analysis of these games, but there's just some things like little details like, you know, how the extra lives are calculated are good to know if you're trying to learn the game, especially. It's very handy to know. I mean, especially a lot of these old games can get really stressful, and just every extra life that you have just is, you know, one layer of stress potentially prevented. Because these games can absolutely be stressful when you're trying to learn how to play them. Even when you're a more experienced player, things can still get really stressful when you're learning games like these. And just having that added buffer is really nice. Now, I don't like the boomerang for, you know, levels like these where there's a lot of tight platforming, things like that. It's a slower weapon when it comes out. It's not as handy for, you know, like landing and then attacking an enemy like that. It just doesn't come out fast enough. I much prefer having the fire, but, you know, I died, so I lost the fire, and now I gotta pay the price. But let's just take our time, right? And I almost did it again. So these dragonflies, what they'll do is they'll basically, you know, they'll stop midair and then they'll fly just right under you. And so they're not really that much of a threat, you know, even if you don't kill them. Watch out for those swordfish, though. They can be a pain. What's interesting about the swordfish in this game is they sort of hover mid-air for a few moments. It's kind of aggravating. We're going to actually skip that arrow because, you know, as much as I don't like the boomerang for, you know, close quarters attacking, it does destroy boulders, which is nice. And I need to actually hurry up, so we're about to run out of time. Oh, and I was rushing there. That was my fault. So, like I said, we were probably going to die quite a bit in this game. And I'm not glad I was right about that, because we were having a really good run up to that point. I mean, we got through so many levels without dying, and now I've just lost like 4 or 5 lives back to back. But that's usually what happens in these Adventure Island games. I usually will have a pretty solid run for a while, and then after my first death, my focus just goes, it's thrown out the window completely. You notice I'm constantly shooting too, and I absolutely hate that part. Hate that part. That's where having the boomerang would have come in handy, but because I died, I lost it. And so now we got to do this with the arrow. So aggravating. I do not like jumps like that in this series. And I feel like you know, because your sprite's bigger in this game, little tight platforming like that is much more difficult to do in this game than it is in the original Adventure Island. So the original Adventure Island had tons of devious platforming, where you'd have a tiny little platform and like one boulder in the middle. Or like an enemy in the middle, and if you had to start without a weapon or something, you would have to do some super tight platforming to get by. Very stressful platforming, and that doesn't happen that often in this game. But when it does, it's almost more painful because your sprite's larger. You know, it's harder to fit between, like, you know, rocks on tiny platforms like that. We're gonna go ahead and get the boomerang here. I might not need it, actually. I'm probably not gonna need it. Of course, right as I say that, some boulders appear, so I guess I do need it. But yeah, that last level is pretty nasty if you die. And, you know, of all the levels I've died at a lot on stream, that was absolutely one of them I've died at a lot. I'm gonna go ahead and get the arrow. I feel like the arrow is one of the best weapons for bosses. If you have a choice of the 3 different weapons, the arrow is nice. Although the final boss, on the other hand, I do actually prefer to use the axe. And you guys will see what I mean once we get there. And here's some fire. Pretty easy boss, actually kind of reminiscent of, you know, the original Adventure Island bosses, where they just throw a fireball, and it just bounces in a simple arc. Alright, there we go. So I think this takes us to stage 6. And this is going to be our last set of normal stages. Then we're on to our final level. Which could be over like that, or it could take a while, like the you know, stage 5-3 where we died a lot. So when I was first learning this game, I was like, when I got to the very end of the game, I was like, huh? That's it? So in the Hudson selection version, there's at least, you know, a world 8, so you do go through 4 levels of, you know, area 7. This game you don't. Area 7 is the last of it. What we're gonna do is actually kill this guy and then let this coyote appear. Although it didn't spawn a PC Engine controller for him, that's a shame. But yeah, this is one of those levels where you really want to take your time at certain parts because, you know, they brought out that big snail and then they had a coyote come from behind. And I'm actually not going to take that boomerang just because it's, I like the faster attack right now of the arrow. And 1 up. I'll take that. Better chance of getting a 1 credit clear. Although a 1 life clear would have been awesome. Because I definitely haven't done that yet. I'm just going to skip that frog. And this is an eggplant right there. You don't want that. I mean, if you really want it, then, you know, take it, but I'm gonna play it safe and not get it. Because eggplants are bad. Alright, good level. That's a level, you know, if I get lazy, I die at that level all the time if I'm lazy. So that's, yeah, you can probably tell already, like, how not being lazy can really pay off in this game. And, you know, the same can be said for pretty much any Adventure Island game. You know, discipline plays a big role in the success that you have with these games. This is probably fire? Yes, very nice. Having that arc just goes a long way too, especially for levels like these where there's hills. So you can send the fire just right down the hill onto enemies at the bottom of the hill. So you'll notice that I'm just constantly attacking sort of at like the decline of the hills. And so the fire will just go all the way down the hill, kill anything that's at the bottom. Alright, another good level. It was such a good level. Master Higgins is just, he's fallen asleep. He's like, you're playing too well. I'm bored right now. Die a little bit, please. Of course, I don't want to jinx myself because this level could be somewhat tough if you die. So let's try to not die. There's a couple of things I do want to talk about on this stage, though. There's these skulls that appear right here. You need to sort of attack them in their mouth once they stop. So they'll bounce up and down for a little while, and they'll be invincible, but then they'll stop, their mouths will open, then they become vulnerable. They shoot out fireballs. And there's our 1 checkpoint. And there's a skateboard. I actually don't really want the skateboard. Let's find a good enemy to end on. Okay, that was a good enemy to end on. The reason I don't want the skateboard on this level is for a couple of reasons. One, there's this egg here, which is really tough to get with the skateboard, if not impossible. And there's also another skull here as well. And I had a feeling I'd get hit by that guy. I should have tried attacking. You've got to watch out for that one lizard. But now we've got to go all the way back to the checkpoint. And we're just going to run under this purple frog. So these purple frogs operate just like they do in the previous Adventure Island games. If you run at full speed, you'll pretty much just run right under their hop. Oh, that was bad. That was really bad. Alright, let's try this again. And that's milk. Milk is great because it just replenishes all your health. I don't know what to do here. Okay, good. We got past it. But there's going to be another skull here as well. Not those ones. This one. You can really see how powerful the fire is in comparison. I mean, we had to hit that guy 4 times with the regular axe, but with the fire, he would have been dead in 1 or 2 hits. Alright, the boss level of Area 6. So you'll probably notice that we haven't, if you're familiar with the old games, we haven't actually hit any bonus levels or anything. I don't think bonus levels exist in this game. If they do, I haven't figured out how to trigger them. But it is kind of interesting to think about because they're pretty prevalent in other Adventure Island games. But as far as I can tell, they're pretty much nowhere to be found in this game. Unless, again, they're just like ultra hidden and I just haven't been able to discover them. But in the Hudson Selection remake, they actually have the bonus stages, very similar to how they have them in the original Adventure Island. And we're just gonna let this thing bounce over us. It drops some spikes. And there we go, on to the final level. And I think we would have actually probably beaten this game already if I didn't go through all of those deaths. We're at about the 48-minute mark right now, as of my local recording. And, yeah, this could have been a sub 50-minute Let's Play, actually, if I had played a little bit better on some of those levels. But overall, it was still a pretty solid run. I can't really complain that much. It's probably one of my better runs on the game. Compared to some of the practice sessions. So one thing you gotta watch out on this level, though, is these ball and chains. And there's probably going to be another one coming up here in just a minute. And I think this is actually the last one. So we want to just run through here just like that. And again, I'm going to go ahead and pick up the axe and do sort of a mashing routine here. And the guy's going to come up from below the floor. These doves turn into projectiles. And there is no checkpoint on this level. So you got to go through this whole stage every time you die. All right. All right, on to form number 2. We're going to try to mash again as well. So when he brings his fist out like that, you want to sort of just try to run away from it. And if you're close to it, then just jump. But that's it. We just beat the game. So yeah, it's a unique final boss for this game. And, you know, he was a little tricky at first, actually. But I think the bigger trouble for me was actually learning that stage, which actually in hindsight isn't really a difficult level. It's just when you get to it for the first time and it's just completely blind, it could be challenging to commit it to memory, and it was definitely challenging to commit it to memory for me the first few times I played it. But I think I've got it down now. I think I've got it down pretty well, and I think I've got this whole game down fairly well, and I hope it was a somewhat respectable playthrough, and I hope you guys, you know, were able to see some things you might not have seen before. If you haven't really played much of this game, and if you do plan on playing this game, hopefully you've learned some tricks or strategies that will help you get through it a little bit easier than if you were just learning it for the very first time. So yeah, here's our ending. And New Adventure Island is a really cool game. If you're a fan of the Adventure Island series, I highly recommend checking the game out. I understand that, you know, physical copies are not cheap, but you can do emulation. There's flash carts like the Turbo EverDrive. It's even on the Nintendo eShop for Wii, where you're not going to be able to access it on the Wii, you know, in the near future. But it is on the Wii U, and so there's, you know, different ways to get the game. It's probably been ported to PS3 and things like that, so it's on a variety of different platforms if you really want to play it and you don't have the original hardware. But if you got the original hardware, there's cheaper ways to play it as well, which is nice. And yeah, I think big Adventure Island fans definitely need to play the game because it fits in very well with the rest of the series. Might even be one of the best games in the series. I would definitely put it above Adventure Islands 2 and 3 on the NES. But I do also prefer, I want to say, like, the more traditional Adventure Island. You know, the original Wonder Boy, the original Adventure Island. I appreciate that more straightforward gameplay. The dinos and stuff were really cool in the subsequent sequels, but I do just like that really simplistic gameplay. I like being able to get the fire and things like that, and just having good, you know, running and jumping action. I have a big soft spot for the first Adventure Island, though, now, since I've been able to beat it. It's such a challenging game, and a lot of the gameplay is very similar to this, but it's definitely more chaotic, so that little bit of chaos, not a little bit, that heavy dose of chaos in the original Adventure Island, I think is what sets it higher for me personally. But I think a lot of people actually prefer this one out of most of the rest of the games, if not all the rest of the games in the series. So yeah, if you like the Adventure Island series, definitely check this one out. Yeah, you'll probably enjoy it. Like, I have no doubt you'll enjoy it if you're a fan of the series. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. That's gonna do it for us. I'm trying to think of other things to talk about, and I think I've pretty much covered just about everything, you know, as far as the mechanics go and things like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap things up here. As usual, thank you for watching. Thank you to the Patreon backers for supporting me, and thank you for all the live stream super chatters. Those direct donations go a long way on this channel. To everyone out there that's new to this channel, feel free to subscribe. I've got a ton of Let's Plays on this channel, and many, many more to come, as always. For those of you guys already subbed, thank you as usual for your continued support. I really appreciate it, and I hope you guys continue to enjoy these videos. And until the next one, take it easy.